Our guest is here and very patient. Thank you very much.
No, yeah, I'm sorry I was late.
Be quiet on set.
Okay.
Tero Documentary presents Filming in Thailand, a podcast for movie lovers with exclusive stories from behind the scenes.
Rolling sound.
Sound rolling.
And action.
Hi, I'm your host Stéphane Lambert, and this is a new episode of Filming in Thailand.
Pailin Wedel is our guest for this episode of Filming in Thailand.
My first question, of course, will be, and is always, are you filming in Thailand?
Always filming in Thailand. Yeah, I mean, this is where I live. This is where I tell the best stories.
In Thailand.
In Thailand.
Okay, let me adjust the sound because surprisingly, you have a very small voice. So you're filming in Thailand. You've been filming in Thailand. You were born in Thailand?
I was actually born in Singapore. My father was a foreign correspondent, and he was based in Singapore when my mom was pregnant. So I was actually born there, but I spent most of my growing up in Thailand.
You're Thai and American.
That's right. My mother's Thai, my father's American.
So how do you deal with the fact that in Thailand you have to be super humble, and in the US, if you are humble, nothing's happening? Is it a struggle?
That's not. I always felt like as long as you're authentic and you're not rude, people see.
You're talking about the US
are.
or Thailand?
Both
Both.
places. Yeah, as long as you are who you say you are and you deliver whatever it is that you promise to deliver. I don't think, I think people in Thailand and the US have the same values in that people appreciate a job well done.
Filming in Thailand.
My first quote is this one from Michael Moore. Who's this famous and very interesting documentary maker. So Michael Moore is saying that documentaries are the first line of education and the second line of entertainment. What do you feel about that?
Second line, you mean, what does he mean by lines?
Documentaries are the first line of education, the second line of entertainment. I would guess it means that it's education first, entertainment second.
Sure. I think it depends on what kind of documentary you're trying to make. There's all sorts of different kinds of documentaries. I come from a journalist background. So our emphasis often is, how does it benefit society? Will this make the world a better place? Is it something that is useful for people to know? And I guess that could all come under education, and news documentaries certainly emphasize the educational aspect of it and the awareness raising aspect of whatever you're focusing on. But and then you get to kind of more entertainment, like the Netflix Tiger King, where it's, more character based, more story arcs that are more contrived. Not that I don't know how contrived this Tiger King is, but I think the emphasis is on entertainment rather than educational and awareness. So I think there's room for all kinds of different docs in this world.
You started your career as a journalist.
That's right.
Is it the best way to become a filmmaker? Documentary filmmaker?
There is no best way. I think people come to filmmaking in all sorts of ways, and I think what drives you, and if you consistently do it well, that's makes you successful regardless of where you started from.
But as a documentary filmmaker, was your background as a journalist and what you learned being a journalist and the way you are addressing topics, subjects, the way you are interviewing characters, the way you get the information from your character, was this background the best way to become a documentary filmmaker or a successful documentary filmmaker?
I don't like saying the best and worst because it depends who it is. But I will say that being a journalist has helped me become a certain type of documentary filmmaker in that I am pretty serious about checking my facts. I have a lot of experience discussing ethical issues that come up with every single documentary. Um, and I also think that my time in the field as a journalist allows me to understand how people work, no matter what culture they're from, because I've filmed in many different countries and myself from 2 different cultures. So I think those things have contributed to, the skills that I need as a documentary, certainly. Yeah.
So when you say you're checking your fact, when you directed the Trap 13, you made sure they were 13.
There were 12 boys and one coach.
You see.
So yes, hopefully the whole world agrees that there were 12 boys and one coach. Yes.
And the coach, so the 13. I was discussing with some documentary filmmakers that are not journalists, and they were saying that, and I would like to know if you agree, that the difference between a journalist take on a matter and a documentary filmmaker take on a matter is empathy. A journalist cannot have empathy for what he's reporting on, and without empathy, a documentary filmmaker cannot direct.
How do you prevent yourself from not having empathy as a human being? I think
journalists are not human beings.
Are they not? I think it's.
If I say that, it's because I have actors. Sorry to interrupt you, but I have actors telling me a director is not a human being, on set. So,
well, I think empathy is something we all have, and for anybody to care about the story, you have to care about it first. Journalists choose what stories they do, and if they don't have empathy for that certain story, then why do it? Why be a journalist at all? I think empathy is always a good thing as long as you are self-aware. If you have certain empathies for a particular side of a story versus the other, then you have to work harder on trying to get the other side and trying to understand where they're coming from. I think you can have as much empathy as you want as long as you're aware about it.
So that would be for both working as a journalist on a subject and as a documentary filmmaker.
Yes, of course.
The approach is the same for you.
In every job.
In
actually.
every job. Okay.
Yeah, I think in every job, in order to be effective in the role that you do, you have to understand where your sympathies lie and keep yourself in check.
But more particularly, when you used to work on news reports for Al Jazeera mainly, and when you are working on a documentary, the momentum is not the same. The length, the time you can dedicate is not the same. Do you have the same approach?
In what sense? Like in storytelling?
The approach in the storytelling, in the way you are structuring your film.
Well, the deadlines are very different. I mean, to do a news story, you often just have the day or a couple of days, and you very much stick to what is new, because that is literally what news is what is new, and maybe a little bit about why it's happening now and why people should know now. And so you're very much focused on what does the audience need to be aware of this, to be useful to the audience. Whereas in documentaries, because it often takes, my last film, The Trap 13, took 2+ years to make, and then the film before that took 5. So you're with that subject and that topic for a very, very long time. So yeah, I think you're focused on how do I film this in a way that doesn't just tell the audience what they need to know, but shows them, over time, what is it like to be this person? And try to get them to understand as much as possible what the situation is.
Filming in Thailand.
Is there a difference in the outcome between, let's say, a news report, even a long format, let's say 30-minute news report, and a documentary, even a short documentary?
I don't know if there's really a definite answer to that, if there's a difference to the outcome. I do find that people who do spend time in a documentary has a likelier chance to understand in a not just a factual way, but in a human way, because you spent 2 hours with this person as opposed to 90 seconds. And then in news, it's about like what information benefits them that day. It's not about something, it depends what it is. Of course, there's horrible things happening in the world that when you see news for that day, you have questions and it remains with you for years and years because it's so traumatic to see these images, especially these days. But with documentary, it's really almost like living in that person's shoes for 2 hours. And I think that's a really effective tool to create understanding and even change minds.
Filming in Thailand.
So
It's not
you're
that
watching a lot
happy.
of documentaries, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Is there some documentaries that change your vision of the world, that changed you as a person, that influence you so much?
They all do. I wouldn't say there's one that like,
They are not all so good, huh?
I try not to watch the ones that are good.
So which one would you recommend? You say, okay, I watched this one and, after I watch it, I really question myself. I changed my point of view. Is there any that you could think of beside your own?
I think there's one, I don't know if it changed my mind because often what it does do is make me feel what maybe a fraction of what the subject's feeling. So I would give an example. For
Please.
example, this documentary called Found, and it's about these girls in America who did DNA testing, one of the ones you get now, and realize that these are all adopted Chinese girls, and did the DNA testing, and they found siblings and cousins through the database. And so they go on a journey to try and find their biological families in China. And spoiler alert here, but you think that
That's a documentary.
that is a documentary. So these 3 girls, I think they're in their early or late teens. You follow them for years, and you see the love that their adoptive families have.
Okay.
And then they all go on this journey to China to see if they can find their biological families. And you think that the story is about them finding their roots and figuring out who they are, but actually the story is about the journey, which is how, family is what you make it, and that the sisters that you have are the ones next to you, and so it's that realization that whatever you're looking for might not be what you think it is, and the journey is important too. So I wouldn't say that changed my mind, but the film was surprising because, of course, again, spoiler alert, they don't find their families.
Don't spoil the film.
But it's still a beautiful film because it's about how these 3 girls, like, from very, very different backgrounds, even though they're related, they grew up very different economic status, religions. One's Jewish. And really,
They are the 3 living in the US.
yeah. It's about them finding each other.
Filming in Thailand.
Are you under the influence of a documentary filmmaker or a film?
Every documentary I make has a different style to it, and I adjust that style according to the story. And Hope Frozen is primarily observational.
Mm-hmm.
The Trap 13 is primarily recreations. So almost based on the interview, almost fictionalized scenes that are
We'll talk about that a bit
impressionistic.
later. Go back to this.
So I wouldn't say that there's one person who's influenced me, but every time I make a documentary in the beginning, I look at the topic and I see, okay, what tools do I have? What other documentaries out there about this or close to this or has the feeling I want to create, and how did they achieve it? And I start that research from zero every time I start a new documentary. So there isn't like one person consistently at the back of my mind whispering to me like, this is how you should make a documentary. But rather like I take what I need every time I start. And I start, looking at new films every time I start.
We'll go back more specifically about the two films a bit later. But
Sure.
So you had someone in mind or a film in mind for Hope Frozen and for The Trap 13?
No, one film. I mean, for Hope Frozen, that's my very first feature-length documentary. And what I did do was I didn't know how to make a documentary. I mean, I literally Googled, like, how do you make a documentary?
That's before AI.
That is before AI, or ChatGPT at least. And I think what I ended up doing was all the advice I was getting was like, watch as many documentaries as possible and take notes. And so in order to force myself to do this, I started a documentary film night at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, where I was on the board at the time.
You did started this.
Yeah.
You did start this.
Every Monday. And that forced me to watch, and also gave me access to documentaries that, we didn't have on Netflix or... Sure. So the award-winning stuff. And so every Monday I watched a documentary and took notes and, how did they structure it? How did they, what is it that comes in the first 20 minutes? How did they do their turning points after each act? How did they build tension here? What is it that the audience is saying afterwards? And really just like, that was my classroom. That's how I taught myself how to do this is to watch many documentaries.
Filming in Thailand.
You went into making a documentary from zero knowledge, what you're saying. I mean, you zero knowledge. You've been a journalist. You produced many segments, many
Sure.
films.
I've done journalistic reportage work. So I'm on camera reporting, a reportage documentary for places like Al Jazeera.
You know how to approach a story. You know how to approach a character. You knew already.
Sure. I knew it's a very different type of storytelling when I am the person telling people what is happening. And when you're the medium in which the audience is receiving information, it all goes much quicker because I'm the interpreter. But in an observational documentary, what you're trying to do is you're waiting until a moment comes where you're showing the audience exactly what happens. In reportage documentary, I can just tell the audience, this is where I'm standing, where there was a fire.
Okay.
I don't have to like be there and film the fire. So it just takes
documentary.
a lot
You come sometimes years after the fire.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
really
archive documentary. We use a lot of archive in the cave as well. There's so many different tools to tell a story.
That's a very interesting approach, and that's I think that could give a lot of hopes to inspiring people who wants to go into documentary filmmaking, and that you just said that you produced, you directed your first documentary film, your feature, with no specific knowledge on documentary filmmaking, and you had your breakthrough with Hope Frozen. I mean, people can spend the whole career without their breakthrough. You had the first film, you don't have the knowledge, you make a film, and you get funding from an international source. You'll tell us maybe more a bit later. You got awards, but not awards. You got like 2 main awards. Are you the same Pailin that I met at the Asian side of the dock workshop back in 2016? And now, are you the same?
How many years has it been? It's been like 7, right? Yeah, they say that your cells, almost 8. your cells die and you have your entire body is replaced by different cells every 7 years.
I would not
So technically
go
I
there.
am a different Pailin.
You didn't change.
But
I didn't mean this. I meant professionally, and your mental.
of course, like I'm much more
your spirit,
experienced now.
Filming in Thailand.
I just wrapped. We still have pickups, but I just wrapped my third film.
Aha.
Just right before New Year's.
Title?
And, working title is Heels. It's it's out
Bad
there.
shoes or?
Heels, and now it's about a Thai drag queen.
Yeah, I'm not far.
It's about Pangina Heels, and it's out in the public. The announcement of this documentary is out in the public, so I can talk about it. But and with this film, again, it's very, very different from the first two. Like, if you look at my bookcase, every time I start a new film, I buy all the books I can buy on the topic. I watch all the films I can watch on the topic. And then I go back to, like, also watching, like, other documentaries that I feel like might have the same themes or same techniques. And you look at my bookcase, I have a whole bunch of books on cryonics and the psychology of, grief, to caves and diving. And now I have another shelf that's all about drag queens and the history of drag. So you are almost forced to become an expert in like a year or two making documentaries, or at least forced to be extremely curious about that topic for a very long time. But what I do have from the experience making the first two is I feel like I'm much more trauma trained. So,
Trauma trained.
So
What do you mean?
for both the first films, we deal with grief, we deal with trauma. People have gone through death of a loved one.
Sure.
And luckily I had good enough instincts from being a journalist on when to push, when to pull back, how to get someone to describe something without re-traumatizing them. But those are skills that I had some practice with as a journalist, even with my first film. But, that first film, I really was quite careful, very, 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 very careful.
Too careful, you think?
No, I think even now I felt like I did the right thing taking 5 years. I wouldn't have felt good about myself if I really pushed them right from the beginning. And I think not only would I have, ended the project, if I pushed too fast, but also I didn't feel like I had the right to make them, to re-traumatize them. This isn't a story that is, about a politician or international news or people who want attention. This is a very private story. And it's much more philosophical and personal rather than like newsy. And then the second film, of course, like we had children. Netflix gave me some extra trauma training.
Really?
Oh, yes.
In order
absolutely.
to respect and to care about their feelings.
Absolutely. It was the first priority. In fact, that was one of the first things that I wanted to make sure of. Is I was like, look, I will interview them, but I'm going to back off if I feel like we're going too far, or if they're not ready, then there's not going to be a film. Like, that is what I told them. I'm not, and they completely agreed. Like, nobody wants to re-traumatize kids. Nobody, but as now I'm on my third film, I'm much better at figuring out where the lines are and reading people and how to interview people in a sensitive way. I think I had those skills before, but I wasn't self-aware that I had them. Now I have names for them, like, anyway.
So you're not the same, you're better.
Hopefully. Hopefully in the past 7 years I did a little growing.
You were not that bad at that time. You were already very good. I remember you got selected to the workshop. You went through the workshop. You could create this very strong relationship with the founder of Asian Side of the Doc. And when you travel, was this the first step to your career? Like as a documentary filmmaker you are now?
I don't think I realized it at the time. At the time, I just knew that I found a story. I know it was a story that will take a long time to make properly. I wasn't even sure I was going to end up making it because it was so difficult to find funding. And I thought I was going to make one documentary and be done and go back to my journalism work. But I think the same forces that compelled me to start on Hope Frozen kept coming back, which is when you do news, the big frustration for me is that I never have enough time to tell people what it's really like.
Filming in Thailand.
There is a weird question. What is you've been giving a lot of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
What is the worst question ever you've been asked? Most inappropriate, the worst question, the one you're looking at the interviewer and saying, what?
No question is bad. First of all, I come from the school where you can ask any question politely and I'll answer it politely. I don't like penalizing any kind of curiosity. It's not questions. It's when people want me to say certain things and they get frustrated with me
because
when I don't.
You don't.
Yes. I had an interviewer who asked me, well, don't you think they're crazy? They must be crazy about the family in Hope Frozen. And I was like, no. Have you watched the film? I was like...
And their answer is, no.
Yeah. So there were moments like that that I was frustrated with. But no question really is wrong.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tero Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
And here we are back with our guest, Pailin Wedel, the one and only Thai filmmaker with an Emmy Award. Pailin, what made Hope Frozen a world-class documentary? The selection at Asian Side of the Dog, the selection at the Wickers Foundation, the Wickers Fund, the first award at the Hot Dog, or the Emmy Award, or just because it was your film?
You'll have to ask the people who made decisions to give me those awards why they got them. I have no idea. I mean...
Did you pay a lot to get the award, no?
The budget was so dry at the end of it.
So you mean you really deserved it? Wow.
Look,
No, of course, yes.
Even with... Let me tell you this. Our first cut of Hope Frozen didn't get into any festivals.
Really?
Correct. And we came back, but we did get notes. And Sundance was very kind, and they actually were willing to get on a Skype call and had a call with us and gave us notes.
So you mean you submitted your film to Sundance?
Correct.
And they didn't selected it?
They did not select it, but they're like, this is so compelling. We want to give you notes. We want to talk to you about it.
Wow, that's good. That's something.
Yeah.
Because they're receiving, 30,000?
Of course, yeah. And it was wonderful. So they saw something. And we got notes from other places as well. And we were so crunched for time in that first cut. So after that first cut didn't get into any festivals, we recut it. And that's the one, based on all the notes we got. And that's the one that got into Hot Docs. And when we got into Hot Docs, it initially wasn't in the competition section. So, the programmers, I didn't think it was good enough for competition or something. I'm not sure why. A few weeks before before the festival, they called us and said, "Oh, you are now. We've moved your slot. You are now in the competition section." Why? I have no idea.
You felt it was something good or bad?
Oh no, we were thrilled. Of course, this is. But
you can compete.
Yeah. I mean, only very few films of a certain caliber get to compete at festivals. And so, but I think my point is that each time it just felt surprising. Like it felt like we were hanging by, the tips of our nails to get into the next phase.
At that time, you already got the funding from the Wickers Fund.
We're done with the film. Yeah.
Okay, the film is done.
The film is done. We've cut it. And then we go to Hot Docs, and the other films in competition are about Syria, about migration in Europe, all these huge hot topics of the time. And here's our little film, about a family that froze their baby daughter, and it just seems
when you tell about the film this way, it sounds weird.
When you just read about the description, it does sound weird, but when you watch it, it's obviously about life and death and love and grief and futurism and faith. It's about much deeper topics, but we're in competition with these big budget films, right? And we thought we had no chance. And
when you say big budget, I mean your budget was what? 100,000?
Yeah, like 200,000
$200,000, which is already huge budget Thailand standard for a documentary. And when you say big budget for the other film, are we talking
I'm sure
about
it's $1 million plus
US dollar?
Yeah, I mean an average film on HBO or Netflix is feature length.
Filming in Thailand.
What makes a film spending $2 million US dollar documentary? What's the difference between spending? I mean, I know the difference, but how do you spend $2 million in a documentary? The director is paid more? The camera is new?
No, it's whatever the documentary requires. Sometimes the $1 million is spent on just buying archive. I mean, It's $1,000 a second for certain.
Guys,
archive.
You want to make money in documentary making? Sell archives.
Or it's making, waterfalls in a cave set, and making sure it looks real, so you got to get in, experts and know how to do sets that way. It's whatever the documentary needs. Look, Hope Frozen did not need to be $1 million film. Hope Frozen just needed time. And sometimes it's time. I just watched a brilliant documentary called American Symphony about John Baptiste. And and it's not a complicated documentary. It's a completely verite film. But they had a crew over at his house for 6 months straight, 24 hours a day.
Oof. Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
That's total a lot of money.
So I think the huge cost is not an actor or a director. The biggest line items usually just the number of days.
A friend of mine who edited an award, Oscar-winning documentary, told me that the day before the nomination, the success with the Oscar they received for the documentary, and the day after was time 10 for her salary.
The budget they would receive?
Yes, for her salary as an editor. Did you feel? Did you experience the same?
I can't say that I have.
Not time 10.
Definitely not times 10.
Filming in Thailand.
Is there a universal way to make a documentary, or each different places you worked have their own, of course they have their own storytelling style, but do they have some ingredients that make them so different?
I haven't found huge cultural differences on how to make a documentary because there's so many different types. What I have found that if you are trying to make a documentary for a particular slot on a particular television channel, they have their own format and style that could be cultural because they get public funding and they need to appeal to the masses of whatever that country is. So it's about studying that program specifically. I found in both cases, because, Hope Frozen was eventually picked up by Netflix and we re-edited it.
For Netflix?
For Netflix, exactly.
To achieve something different for
Not necessarily.
the storytelling?
I think there's a few things that we want to include more archive. We didn't have chance to include archive. And then there were little bits here and there that Netflix felt like needed a little more explaining, especially for a more international audience. And so we did some pickup interviews just to explain a little further, about what Buddhism is and things like that.
So your storytelling is a Thai style storytelling, an American style storytelling? Is it Pailin style storytelling?
I'm so hesitant to categorize people by nationality.
By culture, more by culture.
Or even culture or race. Because what I am is not one thing,
But you are the product of your education.
And my education's mixed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've spent my primary years in Thai school, but my secondary years in international school, but in Thailand, and then my university years in America. So
wow, and you managed to stay sound and safe with all these differences.
Sure. So I have no idea what's Thai. I don't like defining what is Thai and what is American, because ultimately you'll find somebody who I don't think the boundaries are by how you make a documentary isn't bounded by where you live. It's bounded by what you watch and what you're influenced by. I don't think there's a Thai way of making documentaries, and I don't think there's an American way of making documentaries. There is a tradition, in England. If you're from a country that has a long tradition of making documentaries, maybe there are certain styles or stylistic or directors that you take influence from, and you can call that the French way or whatever it is. But I think it's so varied.
So you have your
person
own
specific.
Your own
sure.
style.
I make a Pailin style documentary.
That sounds fantastic.
Filming in Thailand.
What happened after you got the Emmy Awards? The next morning.
Oh.
You woke up and then you realized that
I couldn't even go because I was in the middle of filming Trap 13. So I got up at 6, not expecting to win at all, and then won, was surprised, cried and hugged my husband, and then went straight to work and didn't think about it again.
What a waste! No champagne.
I had to
drink responsibly.
On any set, you're problem solving every morning. I had 200 people that were waiting for decisions, from props to costumes to, how do you want the water to feel like in every single scene? I mean, I had so many people that needed answers. I had to switch from celebratory mode to director mode within seconds, and I was back at work.
But because it's a life-defining moment, a life-defining event to receive an Emmy Award.
Yeah,
when did it kick in?
Can't believe it, honestly. When did it kick in?
Yes.
It still hasn't kicked in.
We'll work on that. So does Netflix call you one day and say, "Hey, now you're an adult, come and work with us"? How does it work? Because everybody is trying to get into Netflix, and they call you.
Yeah, they called me to work on the Thai cave documentary before I got the Emmy. So
before you got the Emmy?
Yeah, way before.
Destroying the myth.
So it doesn't work. I think that is much more based on the experience working with me and my team with Hope Frozen. And I think they felt like that, now that I have experience with them and I have a rapport with the executives there and they know how I think, it's an easier entry. When the cave story came along, I got the call.
Filming in Thailand.
So you have directed the Trap 13. The correct name is the Trap 13.
The Trap
How we
13
survived the Thai cave.
Yes, that's right.
And that was originated from Netflix. It's not your original idea. You were a hired gun.
Correct.
Okay, and so it's a doc drama. I mean, it's a documentary where you mix the real stuff and recreation.
But I wouldn't call it a docudrama.
Okay.
Because the docudrama is much more fictionalized than this. That you see actors and the face of actors dramatizing every single scene.
You just see the feet in your real.
You mostly see feet. That is correct. In our film, it's just hands and feet.
And your next documentary is titled Heels. There is something here.
Oh, maybe.
So was it a way for you to get a taste of working in fiction?
I didn't expect that, but I think it is. I really enjoyed working with the boys, the actors, the child actors that we had casted,
Mm-hmm.
and realized that it's actually quite similar to working with real people. I mean, it is working with real people, but similar in terms of process. Like when you're interviewing for a documentary, you are really trying to understand who that person is and get them to convey, emotion authentically, be themselves authentically, and trust you that you're going to guide them into a place that is mostly safe, depending on who I'm interviewing. If it's a politician, of course not. But mostly safe, and that you can have emotions and you can, tell the story in an engaging, authentic way. With an actor, it's the same in that you also need to work on that trust, that whatever guidance you're giving them is going to take them to a safe place, and that they trust that you have a process that is not going to make them look bad. You have to understand who they are, their background, what's happened to them, and how they can use those emotions to tell the story that's in the script authentically. So it's working with people and understanding who they are and what gets them to the performance that you need.
Filming in Thailand.
Have you watched Tom Waller's film The Cave?
Yes.
The Cave is the other way around. The Cave is a fiction feature film.
Sure.
But with a feeling, a taste of documentary, because some of the actors are
shot. Yeah.
and the way it was shot, and that some actors are playing their own role. I mean, they are impersonating their own self.
Yeah.
Was it one source of your inspire? I mean, were you inspired by this The Cave, or it was completely separate?
I think the processes are so different, because I don't start with a script. I start with directly interviewing as many people as I can, and then the script happens in the edit. So it's just a very different process.
It is often said, yes, actually, that the difference between a fiction and a documentary is that once you reach the editing room with a fiction, the film is already done. I mean, you're just putting back together all the pieces of the puzzle, but the puzzle is you have the way to solve the puzzle. Or documentary, the making of the documentary starts in the editing room. You agree with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't start there, but that's where the bulk of the storytelling happens. What the film The Cave by Tom Waller did do was allow me to, because he shot in a lot of the real places and used a lot of the real people. So it allowed me to kind of see what those places looked like, what shots looked good,
I'm not sure it was, I don't think, I will have to check on that, but I believe it was not shot on location.
The mouth of the cave, it was.
I don't think so.
Yes, it was.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll ask them. We'll ask them.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that. We'll check.
Absolutely, because I also shot at the mouth of the cave.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't shot inside, probably.
They didn't shot inside, and when I visited the set, it was not the real location.
Did they make a giant? No, I don't think so.
This is a conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, I
No. But anyway, that was fiction. His film was fiction. So wherever it took place, it looks like exactly the same.
Sure.
And my question actually was the idea behind my question is to ask you if you are gearing into fiction, into making a fiction film, a drama, like over documentary. Are you thinking of going into fiction?
I think my films, has a thought occurred to me? Yes. there's a frustration in documentary as well, which is that it is still factual.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain things where you want to tell a particular story, but maybe you don't have access, or maybe the characters in the real life isn't compelling enough, but you still like the story, like the arc and the excitement and whatever it is. And that's when fictionalized storytelling is really attractive to me. I think, though, I will always be rooted in a real story. It'll always be based on something truthful, whether it's the situation or the character. There'll be it'll always be inspired by a real person or a real event. I think that's where my heart always will be.
We know now where to find your heart.
Sure.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tarot Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
Back to the studio in Bangkok with Pailin Wedel, journalist, producer, director. And you are introduced always as the Emmy Award winner from Thailand. So should I call you Emmy, or I keep calling you Pailin?
Let's stick to my real name.
Yeah, but no, it was cheap, but it was fun. So Pailin. Let me give you another quote from Ken Burns.
Okay.
Good documentaries tell compelling stories that inform and connect us. Can you make a film without thinking of how the audience will relate to your story?
You can make whatever kind of film you want, Stéphane.
I don't have an Emmy award. That's why, maybe.
Look, I mean, if you don't think about the audience at all, there are many films that, experimental films are often about self-expression and allusions to literary works or art or whatever it is. And direct and complete communication with the audience isn't the goal. That's what experimental films often lead to. I would say that as a documentary, especially one that you want to resonate worldwide, you do have to figure out, how do I communicate certain things in a way that people will understand? And that's always a question in my mind. How do I interview in a way so that the scientist who is very, very smart isn't speaking in technical terms that will alienate the entire audience, right? Unless, if you want to go with Werner Herzog's style, it doesn't matter. Maybe the quirkiness and the far outness of that scientist is what you want to emphasize. So you let him talk, in all the technical terms. And, so I don't know. It's for me, I always think about the audience. I don't know about other people.
Filming in Thailand.
So you're working on your third feature documentary. So I guess you found the key of funding. You find the secret on how to get funded.
I wish. No, every time it's different.
Every time is different.
Different. I don't have an investor that keeps coming back and showering money on me, unfortunately.
So sorry. I was about to ask for the number, but no. Huh?
No. Ho Frozen was a grant, and it took 2.5 years before I even got the Wickers Fund. Thai Cave was fully Netflix, and they came to me just to direct, so I didn't own the IP or anything like that. And then this film was also a film that someone came to me to direct, so I just get a director's fee.
Is Thailand the right place to be a filmmaker?
Every place is the right place to be a filmmaker.
If you are in Hollywood, it's tough, but you have access to the world of entertainment. If you are in France, it's tough, but you have access to government support in a big way. If you're in Thailand, you have access to the nice sea line.
Unique stories. I would say, yes, there is a downside to being in Thailand because we don't have a lot of public funding.
When you say don't have a lot of public funding,
we have almost none. We have one for documentaries.
What is it? The creative content or Thai Media Fund or
The Thai Media Fund. And I think that has to relate to, more educational documentaries and cultural. So, yeah, it's a dire state to be here as a documentary filmmaker because very, very little sources. Very, like I said, I should say
money-wise is maybe not the
zero
place to be,
sources.
but
Yeah, exactly.
there are
But
some other
story-wise,
yes.
story-wise, it's a wealth of stories, and it's a wealth of really talented people to work with, whether it's as cinematographers or editors or, even actors. And it's raw talent. So maybe Thailand's talent still needs more experience. And because we don't have a lot of funding, a lot of people who are crew or creative or actors haven't had a lot of experience working at a high budget professional level. But when you find somebody, you feel like you found like a gem. And that's really fantastic because it's uninfluenced by Hollywood and it's raw, authentic talent that can go, wherever you want it to go. It's really, really cool.
Are you teaching? Are you teaching in universities? Are you talking in classes? Are you giving lectures? Sharing your experience?
Sure, yeah. I do. Between Cave and the Heels, my latest project, I took 3 months off and all I took was teaching gigs, and I put it out there. I was like, whatever your budget is, I'm taking a break. And now I want to give away all the things that I've gotten from the projects, all the lessons that I've learned the past few years. So, I mean, I taught in some very random places, I have to say, like the Bird Conservation Society of Thailand. They really wanted to make, short documentaries about these marshland birds that were going extinct. So I was like, all right, I'll come along on your birding trips and teach people how to use cameras and things like that. Yeah.
Filming in Thailand.
Filming in Thailand has the ability to travel through time with our very own time machine. So now, imagine you are meeting back in time with your younger self, your own self, but younger, and discuss or advise yourself about something important. So first, at what age would you want to meet yourself and where? And then we'll switch on the time machine. So when are we going back in time and where?
I would just go back into my 20s, not that long ago.
This is the time traveling machine.
So you're in front of yourself, you are in your 20s?
Or early 30s. I probably when I was doing Hope Frozen. I think what I would say to myself is remember to enjoy it. Remember to
enjoy it.
Remember
you didn't enjoy it enough?
I was very stressed out the whole time. No funding, no, I was also, very worried about the family and how much I was intruding. Lots of sleepless nights, just worried about everything, because the first time you do anything, it's really scary.
Oh, It sounds heavy.
Yeah. And I would just tell myself like, it's going to turn out okay. And, remember to enjoy the moments, the good ones.
Filming in Thailand.
I have an ultimate quote for you, the last one of this show. And I have the answer already, I'm sure. It says, a great documentary both informs and inspires, from Alex Gibney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that? Both inspire and informs.
Informs, of course, because it's fact. Documentaries are usually based on facts, and whatever you didn't know before is information, right? Inspires. I have not all documentaries need to inspire people. I think documentaries can foster understanding.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like from Hope Frozen, my goal wasn't to have everyone go and freeze their loved ones. That's not the goal.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not the kind of inspiration. I mean, the inspiration I would hope people drew from that is to examine their own faith and judgments and thoughts about what's life and what's death, you know?
Why did you choose Hope Frozen and not Frozen Hope?
Because it's hope that's been frozen.
The name of the little girl.
The name of the little girl is Heinz.
So why Hope Frozen? Because the hope are not frozen. The fact that they freeze their child give them hope. So unfrozen hopes.
Sure. Maybe it should be that.
Where were you asked this question before? I mean, was it a thinking about that, or it came naturally? Hope Frozen, because it sounds super good.
Yeah, no, it came naturally. It's one of the first titles that I thought of and stuck with it.
So, Pailin, we are very happy to give you the award for best guest ever of filming in Thailand.
Okay, thank you.
This is the official T-shirt from Bangkok Dog, Bangkok International Documentary Awards and Film Festival. That is one of our main sponsors that I do organize. And I invited you to be at the jury, and I hope you will finally say yes one day to be a member of the jury. I still have hope. My hope are not frozen.
Okay.
Filming in Thailand.
And that concludes this episode of Filming in Thailand. Pailin, thank you. It's been a thrill to have you with us today.
Yes, thanks for inviting me.
Well, what is the question you would like to answer that I didn't ask you?
Oh, I think you've covered it.
Okay, people, fantastic. That's a wrap.
That was Filming in Thailand, an original podcast brought to you by Tarot Documentary on Rudy Podcast, with your host,
Stéphane Lambert. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode of Filming in Thailand.
Wow, the last 30 minutes were not recorded. Can we... You saw the show. Thank you for listening. Check out the playlist on your favorite platform for more in-depth interviews and behind-the-scenes stories. Thank you very much. Meet you next time. That was Filming in Thailand. Thank you, Pailin.
Thank you.
Filming in Thailand.